Hi, everyone. I'm Vladimir Jutit. We are watching all the news happening in the United States and around the world, but we're going to begin this morning with some breaking news. Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis was just removed from the Georgia election interference case against President-elect Donald Trump. CBS News producer Jared Eggleston joins me now to talk about this. Jared, what are you learning about what happened just a few moments ago?
Vlad, good morning. This is very breaking within the last 10 minutes, I would say. So we're still kind of processing this order. This was a 30-page order from the Georgia Court of Appeals saying that Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis cannot continue to prosecute the former president and several other of his co-defendants in that case in Georgia. Now, all of this stemmed from a complaint filed earlier this year by one of the former president's co-defendants, Michael Roman, who alleged that Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis had a relationship with the lead special prosecutor on the case, Nathan Wade. That sent this Fulton County case into a tailspin earlier this year. We had several days long hearing talking about the district attorney's relationship with Wade. They did tell the court that they did have a relationship, but that it didn't have any impact on the case. Now, these co-defendants were upset about this relationship, saying that the district attorney was benefiting financially from the case because her and Nathan Wade were going on trips to California and other places. Now, ultimately, before this case got sent to the appeals court about middle of this year, around spring, early summer, the judge in this case, Judge Scott McAfee, the Superior Court judge, had said that Fani Willis could stay on the case only if Nathan Wade resigned, which he did hours later. After that, though, the former president and several of those co-defendants, they appealed this to the Georgia Court of Appeals. It has been in limbo for several months as the appeals court tries to figure out what they were going to do here. Now, earlier this month, Vlad, you might remember, we were supposed to have oral arguments in front of the appeals court on this case, asking so that both sides could present how they felt about this and why the district attorney's office feels that they could stay on the case, and while the defendants said that the Fani Willis should be removed from it. The appeals court, at a last-minute effort, canceled that hearing earlier this month and had a lot of people questioning just what would happen next. And this morning, as you said, Vlad, we just got that 30-page order saying that the district attorney's office cannot continue prosecuting this case.
All right, Jared Eggleston for us in Madison, Wisconsin. Jared, you're covering another story, but you were on this story in Georgia for many, many weeks, and you're bringing us the breaking news this morning. We appreciate you, as always, my friend. Get warm. Let's bring in CBS News legal contributor Jessica Levinson. She joins me now to break down Jared's reporting. So Jessica, help us understand, what was the Court of Appeals? What were they looking at, and ultimately, how did they come about with this decision? Because originally, it was what we understood was that if Nathan Wade was removed from the entirety of this case, which he did, he resigned and he recused himself from it, then she could continue to stay on. What happened?
That's exactly what they were considering, was that trial court decision that the appearance of impropriety could be cured by Nathan Wade stepping aside. Was that correct? And you're exactly right, Vlad, to situate us in terms of what was the Court of Appeals doing. And in this 31-page ruling, they said very clearly, our job is just to look at what the trial court did and determine whether or not that was correct under the law. They acknowledged that both sides had diametrically opposed views of when Fani Willis would be required to step down under Georgia law, whether it would be automatic disqualification or whether, as she argued, there's no disqualification under Georgia law based on the appearance of impropriety. Let's get to the punchline here, which is the problem the Georgia Court of Appeals had with the trial court was that they said it cured any questions of appearance of impropriety moving forward after Nathan Wade stepped down, but it didn't cure those questions before. The questions that plagued Fani Willis in terms of who to prosecute, in terms of which charges to bring. They said it wasn't a broad enough remedy, meaning Nathan Wade stepping down was not enough to cure the appearance of impropriety issue. Fani Willis herself had to be disqualified as well. The court, last thing, acknowledged that this is rare. Under Georgia law, the appearance of impropriety alone generally does not give rise to the need to step down and to recuse. But in this case, they said it is that rare instance.
So the other interesting aspect to this, Jessica, is that they have not chosen, perhaps it wasn't under their purview, but to toss the case out completely.
That's right. And that was not the way you asked that question again is right. That was not their purview. Their purview was looking at what the trial court said with respect to Fani Willis and the order saying if Nathan Wade steps down, that's enough. Now, what we know is that the case, or what we understand from reporting months ago, is that Fani Willis having to step down does not necessarily mean that the case itself unravels. But now we have to overlay this question about Fani Willis and her appearances of impropriety on the reality of the political calendar. And I think it is extremely unlikely that anything other than a full pause on this case occurs for the next 4 years.
So my question to you was, if there is a pause on this case, it doesn't completely go away, but during the president-elect's terms, this case perhaps, we're speculating, but the Trump people can make the case that there was impropriety, which is why Fani Willis has been removed. And so there should be at least a pause in this case. I'm sure they're going to argue that the case should be thrown out completely because they're going to say that Fani Willis was tainted from the jump. And the only reason she was going after the president-elect was for political reasons. But that's a possibility.
Well, and I actually want to expand on that a little bit in the sense of the Trump team will absolutely say this case needs to be trashed, that the only real remedy here is a complete dismissal, but for two reasons. One is the Fani Willis issue, but the other is the fact that we would be moving forward with a state criminal case against a sitting president of the United States. So there are really two tracks to their argument of stop this case. One is the problems with the prosecutor who decided to bring the case, who to charge, which charges to bring. The other is this idea of, does a state even have the power to prosecute a sitting president of the United States? And that's where I think we most strongly see the not just possibility, but probability that nothing happens in this case, if anything ever happens, for at least the duration of this presidential administration.
But Jessica, just before we go on to talk with Caitlin Huey-Burns for the political aspect of the story, so if a state is not able to charge or prosecute, I should say, a sitting president of the United States, if Fani Willis was found to not have behaved improperly, would this case would we still see a pause?
Yeah. Thank you for that clarification. I think that is right, that there are two separate issues here. There's the Fani Willis issue. That's the one we're talking about this morning. The Court of Appeals saying that she needs to be removed, that that's the only cure based on the conflict of interest, based on the appearance of impropriety. And that this is a decision that would have occurred regardless of the outcome of the presidential election. Separately, because President Trump did win the election, because he is going to be the sitting president again, the Trump team is saying this case cannot move forward. And they're making arguments, Vlad, dealing with the power of states to reach up and prosecute the chief executive, saying that actually would constitutionally violate the president's ability to, quote, take care to faithfully execute the laws. And that is a separate track that is not related to Fani Willis.
Fascinating. All right, Jessica, stand by. I want to bring in CBS News correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns, who's joining us now live from West Palm Beach, Florida. So, Caitlin, my guess is that they are celebrating there in Mar-a-Lago this morning.
That's a pretty good guess, Vlad. We haven't officially heard from the Trump team their reaction to this, but we can say without a doubt that this is a huge win for the Trump team. Because remember, this was the last remaining criminal case against Donald Trump. Since his election, those 2 federal cases have wound down. The prosecution, the sentencing in that New York hush money case has been delayed until after Trump takes office. And Jessica just laid out incredibly well all of the legal dynamics here. But politically speaking, this is a victory for Trump. The big question remaining is, and we don't know this yet, but we can guess that they want to have this thrown out entirely. And so, as you were just discussing what this means in terms of that, having the case completely thrown out, because we've also seen in the hush money case that Trump's team wanted that case thrown out, even though sentencing was delayed until after his term ends. But this is a huge victory for Trump. Remember, they had brought this to light in the first place when it comes to Fani Willis. Trump and several members of his orbit were indicted as co-conspirators in this case at the time as well. And so as we're waiting for a statement from the Trump team, there's no question they take this as a big political victory.
Yeah, indeed. Caitlin Huey-Burns for us this morning. Thank you, Caitlin. Appreciate it. Let's quickly go back to Jared Eggleston in Madison, Wisconsin, who's got some more details for us on the breaking news that the Fulton County District Attorney, Fani Willis, has been removed from that election interference case in Georgia regarding the president-elect. Jared, what can you tell us?
And Vlad, a lot of people are now asking what's next for Fani Willis. At this point, she's not going to leave office. She actually just handedly won re-election back in November. So she'll be here for another 4 years prosecuting cases, unless obviously she decides to leave her post there. But this is not a good look for her office. This was one of the big cases that her office was hanging her hat on. Another case that they were hanging their hat on, a RICO case involving Young Thug and several other defendants. That case has also been kind of in limbo over the last few months. So this is definitely not a good day for the DA's office. And so far, we have not heard any comment from them, Vlad. Typically, they don't comment on things, but we are reaching out to them, and we'll, of course, bring you any updates if they do decide to issue a statement on it.
All right, we'll check in with you if that should happen. Jared Eggleston for us in Madison, Wisconsin. Jessica Levinson, who came into us from California. We appreciate it. I know it's early there, Jess. And, of course, Caitlin Huey-Burns, always on duty in West Palm Beach. We appreciate all of you. Thank you. Okay, let's take a look at Capitol Hill now, where lawmakers are running out of time to reach an agreement to keep the lights on after demands from President-elect Trump and his allies like Elon Musk effectively killed a bipartisan stopgap funding bill. Let's bring in CBS News political reporter Torian Small, who's joining me now from the Hill to talk more about this. So what are the chances of averting a shutdown looking like at this point, Torian?
Yeah, Vlad, as we approach the 11th hour here on Capitol Hill, things are looking pretty bleak, to put it pretty bluntly. I mean, not only is Speaker Johnson facing the ire from Democrats for reneging on an agreement that they have previously reached, he's also looking at backlash from Republicans. Many in the conference were unhappy with, but some willing to hold their nose to vote for the CR that was previously negotiated in order to avoid a government shutdown. A lot now are coming out saying that they don't even want a clean CR. They're just hoping that we now shut down the government in order for Republicans to get what they want, which is the will of Donald Trump. And that's a CR and also a negotiation or some type of deal on the debt limit. When it comes to now the problem that Johnson faces from Democrats, Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries said yesterday that now that he is pulling out, he is creating or setting up a dangerous game, looking at an opposition party that will no longer be willing to play ball. Take a listen to what he had to say.
We reached an agreement with House Republicans. It was a bipartisan agreement. House Republicans have unilaterally decided to break an agreement that would provide support for everyday Americans, keep the government open, and avoid a government shutdown. If you break an agreement, you own the consequences visited upon the American people.
Jeffries has been repeating those words since yesterday, first put out in a statement, then he held a press conference. We asked him questions during that press conference. He didn't answer any of them, though, about whether or not he's still in communication with Johnson. He still hasn't made that clear if they're going back to the negotiating table, but it looks unlikely that Jeffries is willing to budge, which could mean a disaster as we come down to the wire here.
Any word, Torian, from Republicans and Speaker Johnson himself about the influence of tech billionaire Elon Musk on this process? I will note that Elon Musk was the first person to tweet about this, to tweet about his displeasure with this potential resolution, and then the president-elect weighed in. So it's kind of the opposite way of the way things are supposed to work, which is the commander-in-chief, or at least the president-elect in this case, would have that decision. And I'll note that the president-elect also says that he's going to work to primary people in the Republican Party who do vote, if they should vote for this continuing resolution.
Yeah, Vlad, for about 24 hours now, Johnson has been pretty elusive, avoiding talking to the press at all, instead opting to have these closed-door conversations with members of his conference. I would imagine it's to placate some of the concerns that they have, especially after, really, like you said, Elon Musk led the charge here on this. Democrats are saying that Johnson needs to grow a spine. Elon Musk is not the leader of the Republican Party, but it is instructive, the fact that he was kind of the domino that started this effect. Not too long after, we saw that statement from Donald Trump, pretty much in unison, echoing some of the same things that Elon Musk has said. So it appears that Johnson has been significantly weakened in terms of influence on the Hill as Republicans are looking to take clues elsewhere.
All right, Torian Small for us on the Hill reporting this morning. Thank you. Let's bring back CBS News correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns to talk more about this. So Caitlin, it just is sort of interesting to me that, you've covered the White House for a long time now. There's always this notion that folks, whether you're an elected member of Congress or simply a supporter of the president, the notion is always you don't get ahead of the president of the United States, or you don't get ahead of the president-elect. You let the president-elect or the president of the United States make those proclamations and statements, and then you either support or you don't. But in this case, it seems like Elon Musk is leading the charge. Again, he's not an elected official. He's just a guy who spent a lot of money to help Donald Trump win this election. What are you hearing?
Yeah, and he's just a guy who's been hanging out at Mar-a-Lago since the election, at Donald Trump's side at every turn, going with him even last month when Trump went to visit House Republicans at their conference after the election. So he has played an outsized role. There's no question about that. And Vlad, it was really interesting yesterday. We didn't hear from Donald Trump all day on this continuing resolution. We did see nearly 100 tweets from Elon Musk pressuring lawmakers not to support this bill. Now, remember, Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy have been tasked to run this DOJ committee to go after government waste. And if you actually see that continuing resolution, it is a stack of paper there. So this was kind of a ripe target for them to try to go after. But there are questions about, what Donald Trump's role is here and whether Musk is leading the charge, at least politically, applying that pressure. You also heard a lot from Steve Bannon yesterday, Donald Trump Jr., and kind of outside influences on these lawmakers. But another interesting point, Vlad, is that, where is President Biden in all of this? He, of course, is still the president until January 20th, and yet you have the president-elect kind of leading this charge here. There is also, it's important to point out that however, Republicans want to handle this, they are going to need Democratic support for anything that they want to do in this turn. And remember, next year, the Republicans' margin in the House is going to be even slimmer.
Yeah, and so, Caitlin, that's sort of my follow-up question, which is this will only hurt, correct me if I'm wrong, wouldn't this only hurt Republicans if they are not able to get this done by the 21st and people all of a sudden are furloughed during the holidays? And that includes Democrats, Republicans, whoever's working in the federal government who now can't continue to work because of Congress's inability to get this done. Wouldn't that ultimately hurt Republicans?
Yeah, delayed paychecks. Think about those TSA lines at the airport when everybody's trying to, do their holiday travel. people not getting paid but having to work anyway. Not exactly a Christmas wish list for those types of people. And here is the issue here is that, Republicans have borne the brunt of the political fallout of this before. Vlad, how many of these have we covered over the course of the past several years? But there is this feeling here that, they want to push ahead anyway, even if the political fallout, doesn't favor them. They're speaking to their base of supporters.
All right, Caitlin Huey-Burns for us once again from West Palm Beach. Thank you, Caitlin. Still ahead, the man accused of killing the United Healthcare CEO has just appeared in court. We're going to go there live. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. The suspect in the murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson has just appeared in a Pennsylvania court. Luigi Mangione is now expected to face federal charges in the case. He could appear in a U.S. District Court in Manhattan as early as today. I want to bring in CBS News correspondent Nicole Valdez for more. Nicole, it's good to see you. So tell us about Mangione's demeanor in court this morning.
Well, Vlad, he definitely wasn't nearly as expressive today as he was last week. He seemed much more calm, sometimes almost even looking bored, sort of swaying in his chair as he not only waited for certain proceedings to move forward there, but as he spoke to his attorney about what their plan was today. Now, I do want to tell you, a few moments ago, we just watched 6 SUVs with the New York Police Department, lights and sirens on, heading out of the Blair County courtroom, which means Luigi Mangione is officially on his way back to New York State. After what was likely about an hour or so in that courtroom, both sides, the defense and the prosecutors, actually went back into the judge's chambers before the scheduled extradition hearing today, where clearly they came to some sort of agreement and decided to go ahead and move forward with waiving his extradition hearing today and allowing him to be surrendered into New York police custody, Vlad.
And so, Nicole, briefly describe what the scene was like outside of the courthouse.
Vlad, I mean, there was a zoo of people out here today, a line nearly down the street as many people realized that the courtroom today was going to be open to the public, and it was a first come, first served basis. So a long line of people, some that actually had signs that said "Free Luigi," were here wanting to get a seat inside and really see him in person. Again, we know, of course, the charges he's not only facing here in Pennsylvania, but the several murder charges he's facing in the state of New York. One of those, of course, attached to the word terrorism. And that seemed to be a sticking point for a lot of the people, likely spectators, but some even coming as far as from the state of Ohio to be here in person to watch this play out. Right now, I'll tell you, there are still a few who have been outside here, again, showing off their signs, showing their support. One sign in particular saying, "The people hear you."
All right, Nicole Valdez for us this morning. Thank you, Nicole, as always. Appreciate it. All right, let's talk about those Amazon workers that are on strike, and they are doing it at the height of the holiday shopping season. The International Brotherhood of Teamsters says the 10,000 workers have joined them on the picket line as of 6 a.m. They're in New York City, Atlanta, parts of California, and Illinois. The union says it's the largest strike against the company in U.S. history. For more on this, I want to bring in Jason Miller. He's a professor of supply chain management at Michigan State University. So, Professor, just for our audience to understand, how big or what percentage of these striking workers affects Amazon's total workforce?
Yeah, so this strike, even though the number may seem large, is less than 1% of Amazon's workforce, and a small number of facilities relative to the hundreds of large fulfillment centers Amazon has located in the U.S.
So, yeah, I checked this morning just because I do have, like everybody, a couple of packages coming in this week from Amazon in anticipation of the holidays, and everything seems to be on time. But the Teamsters say if your Amazon package is late this holiday season, you can blame these strikes. I don't see an impact today. Might I see one tomorrow?
I wouldn't in general be too worried. Again, when you're thinking about this, this is a fairly isolated set of incidents relative to Amazon's larger network. And in many instances, Amazon has the same product at multiple fulfillment centers around certain geographic markets. So even if that item is not coming from facility 1 that's on strike, it may be at facility 3 or 4 and can be fulfilled from there.
So ultimately, Professor, before we let you go, what is the effect of a strike like this? I mean, for those workers who are striking, will they be able to achieve their goals?
That's more of an open question. Amazon has been quite stringent in their views on unionization and is not currently recognizing these individuals as even belonging to the Teamsters. So we'll have to see how this plays out. But right now, it doesn't seem that Amazon's really willing to budge. And this type of event is not the widespread, implication, let's say, of Boeing's strike that we had over the last couple months, where you do see corporate have to, give in more to the union.
Fascinating. Professor Jason Miller for us this morning. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, we're going to take you to the streets of Port-au-Prince to hear directly from one of the gang leaders controlling Haiti's capital city. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Here's a look at some of the top stories we're following. California Governor Gavin Newsom issued a state of emergency in response to the rise in bird flu cases in the state and across the country. Yesterday, the CDC confirmed the very first severe human case of H5N1 bird flu in Louisiana. The patient is in critical condition with severe respiratory symptoms. The person was exposed to sick and dead birds in a backyard flock. This is the 61st confirmed human case of bird flu reported in the U.S. since April. In West Texas, video captured the moment a Union Pacific train collided with a tractor trailer and flew off the tracks. At least one person was killed and 4 others were injured. The train also struck the city's Chamber of Commerce building after it derailed. Officials say 3 cars had hazardous materials, but everything is contained. Russian President Vladimir Putin delivered his annual end-of-the-year news conference this morning. He said Russia is, quote, stronger than ever, and touted the gains his troops are making in Ukraine. Putin also said that he will ask former Syrian President Bashar al-Assad about missing U.S. journalist Austin Tice. Assad flew to Moscow after he was ousted by rebels earlier this month. The two have not met yet, but Putin said this morning he has plans to do so. All right, we've been talking about gang violence in Haiti for months, but now we are getting an inside look at just how dangerous and violent conditions are in parts of the country. BBC News senior international investigative correspondent Nawal Al-Maghafi recently spoke with one of the gang leaders, and we need to warn you, some of the images and content in this report are disturbing.
Downtown Port-au-Prince, now the scene of daily street fighting between gangs vying for control. Once one of the city's most populated areas, it's now a ghost town. We're with the Kenyan police on a patrol. They're here to support the Haitian forces as part of a multinational response to restore law and order. It's not long before we come under fire.
We're being shot at by a gang member from that direction, so the guys in here.
And then this. A human body burning in the middle of the street. We're on our way to meet the leader of one of the most prominent gangs here, filming our journey undercover. Reynald Destina, notorious for kidnapping, is wanted by the FBI.
Your gang and gangs like yours have spread terror across the city. You have raped people, you have killed people.
When we capture an enemy, we are celebrating a victory. So sometimes the group gets excited. They capture somebody and they do things they weren't supposed to do with them, because when it's been the other way around, they would have done the same to us.
Gang warfare has driven 700,000 people out of their homes to overcrowded schools like these, where sexual violence and drug use is rife. This is the 3rd place Negociant has had to make home. She tells me she's too afraid to sleep here. She stays up to watch over her 5 children.
My neighborhood was taken over by gangs. I left and went to live in Solino for safety. Today again, I'm on the run to save my life and my children.
The violence is escalating. a clear sign the Kenyan strategy is failing. 2,500 personnel were due to be deployed, but only 400 are here. They tell us they're making progress and take us to see a former police station that they've now retaken. But the area is still surrounded by gang snipers. The police fire some warning shots.
Here, just look, they can shoot from here.
So just that building over there, the red with the blue, is where the snipers are shooting at you?
You hear the shots?
Yep.
Okay, stay down now.
The violence permeates every stage of life here. Shayna is 2 years old. She, like 760,000 children in Haiti, is starving.
I would like my kids to be able to eat bread, even if I can't. I would like to get proper care for my child too. I don't want to lose her.
But as the situation here continues to deteriorate, Haiti risks losing an entire generation. Noelle McAfee, BBC News, Port-au-Prince, Haiti.
And Noelle McAfee joins us now from London. Noelle, can you tell our audience, in your experience in meeting with this gang leader, if he at all articulated what his goals are, what his gang wants, what the other gangs in Haiti want?
You know what? It's a really important question, because what struck me about our interview with him is some of what he said echoed a lot of what normal Haitian civilians told us. He said, we want a government who cares about us. We want a government who isn't corrupt, a government that cares about the Haitian people. We want opportunities for young people in Haiti. We want more employment. He made a really important point. He said, you know, if young men and boys were finding jobs and were finding opportunities in Port-au-Prince, they wouldn't be joining and following people like me. He made quite a stunning claim. He said, you know, they join me because, not because they're afraid of me, they join me because I make sure they keep away from famine. I make sure that they're fed and that they can pay to go to school. And I found that very interesting. I think one thing that is lacking in trying to resolve the situation in Haiti is really looking at the core of it. Why are these young boys joining these gangs? And it is because of high unemployment. It is because of the lack of opportunity and the lack of governance.
And the other question that people will have is, how are these gangs receiving their weapons, how they're receiving money, who is organizing them? Because Haitians don't produce any guns. The country does not produce weapons. Those weapons flow into the country illegally from the United States, obviously. And this gang leader, as you know, is wanted by the FBI, but you were able to get to him at great risk to yourself. But I'm curious as to whether or not they shared with you who ultimately is making the decisions for some of these gangs.
You know, during our research, we looked into this briefly, and we saw that a lot of the guns that are being funneled into these gangs are coming from places like the United States. As we were working towards this trip, we actually found out that some of the weapons that were coming had just been stopped in the weeks before we got there. They're also coming from neighboring countries through places like the Dominican Republic. But one of the interesting things that Tilapli, the gang leader we spoke to, actually told me, he said, you should look into who's in government. You should be looking into why, you know, our existence benefits them. You question where we got all these guns from. Well, why don't you ask them, how did we get these guns? And maybe you'll find out that they are complicit too. Maybe you'll find out that they're profiteering from this. Obviously, these are such big claims to make, and we weren't able to actually get into if any of them were true. But I think, yeah, it was a very interesting argument made by him.
Yeah, that ultimately is the question that a lot of people have, which is who in the Haitian political world is actually maneuvering or puppeteering some of these gang leaders. So the final question is, the people that you spoke with, you know, this is such a tragic story, and I've covered it for many, many years, but what did they tell you that they want the rest of the world to know about their dire straits?
When we, when we spoke to the young men in the hospital, we went to a hospital and we went to a ward full of young men who had been caught in the crossfire of this violence. One of the young men was actually due to go to the United States to study. And, he said the same. He said, we want jobs, we want opportunity, we want stability, and we want a government that cares for the Haitian people and not for itself. The same thing, we went to a pediatric ward where we met the mother who you saw in my piece, Vanda, whose daughter Shayna is suffering from severe acute malnutrition. She said, I just want a future for my children. I want stability. And I don't want to see more of these quick fixes. They see this Kenyan force that's there on the ground right now to try and restore law and order as a quick fix. It's not really looking into the core of the problem and why these gangs are evolving in the first place.
An excellent point, and excellent reporting. Noel Al-Magafi, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Vlad, for having me.
All right, to the Middle East now, where there's a new report out by Human Rights Watch that accuses Israel of, quote, acts of genocide in Gaza, alleging that Israel caused thousands of deaths by restricting access to clean water. Israel has rejected the accusations and said it will continue to ensure humanitarian aid enters the enclave. Our Chris Lipsey has more from the Gazan side of the Karim Shalom crossing.
Well, we've been given very rare access to Gaza at a distribution center for aid just on the other side of the border with Israel. We're told that about 200 trucks pass through here every day, bringing it into the people who need it in Gaza. But the big question is, does the aid actually get to the people who need it most, the civilians? We've spoken to some of the truck drivers and workers here at this distribution center who tell us that looting is still a problem. Now, if you talk to the Israelis here, they'll tell you that there's more than enough aid going into Gaza, but it's a distribution problem. They say they need more help from the international community operating in an active war zone. You can still hear shelling in the distance. In fact, the big problem that the international community has is gunfire. A lot of these drivers have to put up with that active war zone. So it's asking a lot from the Gazan side and from the international community. Another interesting thing about distribution centers like this one is that if there is indeed a deal, there's a lot of excitement right now about a possible hostage deal in exchange for a ceasefire. Reports indicate that such a deal would also come with a massive influx of aid. So we could see aid centers like this filling up with even more aid to be distributed to Gaza. That in and of itself would be an indication of this hostage crisis and this war perhaps finally coming to a close.
All right, Chris Lipsey for us this morning. Thank you, Chris. Okay, something different now. Millions of Americans are heading out for the holidays as the travel rush begins. What to expect across the roads and the skies. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. All right, let's take you now to Capitol Hill, where New York Congressman Jerry Nadler is talking about this budget battle. Let's listen.
Before we can count the electoral votes on January 6th. If we aren't organized, if they haven't elected a speaker by January 6th, they can't count the electoral votes. And then you get real chaos.
Are Democrats done bailing Republicans out? Because that's happened a few times.
We are done. We made the deal, and the deal was made with the total agreement of the Republicans and the Democrats in both houses. It's a good deal for the American people. It provides funds for disaster relief. It provides funds for agriculture relief. Everything in it is justified, as you'll see when you see the details. And for the Republicans, for President Musk to come in at the last moment and blow up the deal is just intolerable. I mean, you have to negotiate, and you have to be able to.
Ouch. Jerry Nadler there, Congressman of New York, just calling Elon Musk the president, saying that Democrats agreed with Republicans in this bipartisan deal. And now that Elon Musk and the president-elect have killed it, that the Democrats will no longer, or at least will not attempt, to rescue the Republicans from this quagmire. We'll keep an eye out on movements on Capitol Hill and bring you news as warranted. Meanwhile, The holiday travel rush begins today as millions of Americans make their way to their holiday destinations over the next few days. AAA predicts over 119 million Americans will travel 50 miles or more from their home for the holidays. Domestic travel is expected to exceed the previous record set back in 2019. CBS News national correspondent Manuel Bojorquez is live at Miami International Airport, and he joins me now. Manny, good to see you, my friend. So what kind of lines are you seeing this morning?
Hey, it's good to be with you. As you can see, there is a lot of movement here at Miami International Airport and pretty packed security lines here at Checkpoint 3. Packed, but so far they're moving, so that's the good news. As you mentioned, everybody is expecting a record-breaking holiday travel season, including AAA, where you mentioned their number they're putting out there this year. About 120 million people will be on the move, according to AAA. The majority by car, but a good amount will be traveling by air. To that, the FAA says, or I'm sorry, the TSA, however, the people who screen all those passengers, they're expecting to screen 40 million travelers from December 19th today to January 2nd. That is a 6% increase over last year. Of course, the weather can always complicate things. Not so much expected to be a problem here in South Florida, but the northern plains and the Northeast could have some wintry messes going into the holiday season, and that could have a ripple effect.
All right, Manny Bojorquez for us at Miami International. We appreciate it, Manny. Thank you. The fate of TikTok is in the hands of the U.S. Supreme Court, so what happens now? We'll discuss next. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. The Supreme Court has decided to hear TikTok's appeal of a new law that would force its parent company to sell the app or shut it down. The law passed with overwhelming support over fears China is using TikTok to spy on Americans. The hearing is scheduled for early next month. Emily Baker White is a senior writer at Forbes, and she joins me now to talk all about this. So, Emily, great to see you. So now that the highest court in the land is involved, what happens to this January 19th action date?
So the first thing that happens is all the lawyers at DOJ and all the lawyers at TikTok who've been briefing this case just had their holidays totally ruined. The Supreme Court opted to hear this case very, very fast, and they've set a sort of unprecedented briefing schedule to make that happen. Now, there's 2 hours of oral argument set for January 10th. The Supreme Court set this schedule with the appearance that they're going to try to resolve the case before January 19th, which is the date that the law would require TikTok to go dark in the United States, unless the Supreme Court stops it from going into effect.
So we know that this law is narrowly focused on TikTok. What impact could it have on other companies and businesses?
So it could actually have a lot of impact down the road. Congress wrote this law in an unusual way. The first thing they did was signal out TikTok and ByteDance, so other apps owned by TikTok's parent company like CapCut. There's a homework help app called Goth. There are a number of others that could also be banned starting on the 19th. But the law is also meant to cover other companies of a certain size that are in the sort of social media space that are owned by foreign companies with ties to foreign adversaries. So down the road, if there is a Russian Facebook and Iranian TikTok that comes up that's sort of the next popular app, this could apply to them as well.
You know, it's interesting, Emily. The president-elect has said that he has a soft spot in his heart for TikTok. And yet I have a friend who worked in the Obama administration, and I asked her once if she had TikTok, and she said to me that she would not ever even download the app onto her phone because, quote, she sat into many national security briefings. In other words, she's worried about what that app could do to compromise her. What do you understand about why the president-elect seems to be at a disconnect from members of his own party?
In his first term, President Trump tried to ban TikTok for national security reasons. So he's clearly at a flip-flop here. He met with a donor who ended up being influential in his campaign, who's an investor in TikTok. Some people think that has to do with it. Other people just think he thought that TikTok was an electoral advantage for him. And so it may just be that his flip-flop comes down to politics, but I'm not in his head. I don't know what he thinks. What I do know is that the Supreme Court seems to be trying to sort of cut the Trump DOJ and the president-elect out of their decision-making about whether this law should stand or not. By setting the briefing schedule the way that they did, they made pretty clear that they want to hear from this DOJ.
Fascinating observation. Emily Baker White of Forbes, thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, let's move to weather now. Bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Kate Bilo with a look at the national forecast. Hey, Kate.
Hey, Vlad. Good morning. Let's talk about holiday travel, right? Because a lot of people are going to be hitting the roads and the skies heading into the weekend out ahead of the Christmas holiday. And the good news is most of the weekend looks quiet. Today and tomorrow, not quite as much, though. We have a clipper system bringing snow to portions of the upper plains and the Midwest. And that could slow you down today. That's going to move into the Northeast tomorrow with the chance for some light rain and snow. Today is quiet. Philadelphia, New York, Boston, quiet across the South as well, but expect some delays across the Northern Plains and the Midwest with that snow, Vlad. Back to you.
All right, Kate Bilo. As always, Kate, we appreciate it. We'll see you tomorrow. That does it for me, folks, but stay right where you are. After the break, Elizabeth Cook is live from San Francisco with all the news breaking from